Hey guys, this is Matt from MG Modern Watches, and we are here with another unboxing video for you, or unpackaging as the case were. And this is a little bit interesting, a little bit new for the channel, in that it's these are two vintage Russian watches that I purchased off of eBay. And there were a few reasons why I purchased these. Just set these down and I can talk a little bit more about them. But the main reason is I really wanted to experiment a little bit with smaller case dimensions and how they might look on my wrist. I see a lot of vintage watches that are 33, 34 millimeters from luxury brands that may be a lot cheaper than our standard 36, 38, 40, 43 millimeter watches that everyone wears now. So sometimes you kind of are curious. It's a little bit lower price point, little vintage watches look cool. Maybe it'll look good on your wrist depending what your wrist size is. So just wanted to get something a little smaller to play around but not spend a ton of money. So while looking for some other things on eBay, I came across these two watches I thought looked kind of cool, and it wasn't meant like this, but I actually purchased them from the same seller. I didn't realize at the time even when I purchased them, but they're from the same seller in the Ukraine. But these are Russian made watches. Took about a week or actually maybe about 2 to 3 weeks to arrive, but arrived in that packaging in the bubble wrap and tape, and this is the first one. So this is a Vostok watch, and you may be familiar with that name. It is a very popular kind of vintage watch brand. There's a ton of these watches on eBay. They do make a very popular model called the Vostok Amphibia, you may have seen, which is a dive watch, a variety of dive watches they sell, funky colors, kind of chunky, 60s, 70s looking. But this is a Vostok watch. It's a dress watch. Again, this one is 34 millimeters, 18 millimeter lug width. And it kind of has this cool copperish looking dial. And the pictures look a little bit more maroon, but it actually looks kind of cool with this kind of brownish, almost tropical looking dial, almost faded looking, which is cool. Has a small sub-seconds dial, and actually should probably try to wind the watch a little bit. These are manually winding watches, and I'm not sure if you can see, it's a little tough to tell with the lighting, but it looks like the seconds are running, so seems to be running okay. Case, I'm not sure the exact case thickness. It does have a little thickness to it, but it looks very small. So I'm curious to see how this will look once I get a strap on it. But it is cool looking dial, the kind of script print of the name of Vostok in Russian. It almost looks like, I can't even read it, but it's interesting. Has Arabic numerals, kind of a funky looking script, so that's the first one. You can see that the crystal, or the, I'm not even sure what this is, it might be acrylic with a watch this age, heavily scratched. So this was the other reason I purchased a watch, is because I wanted to experiment with a product I purchased, which you also may be familiar with, which is called PolyWatch, which is a kind of an abrasive ointment that you can apply to mineral crystal, acrylic crystals, and supposedly take scratches out of watches. Again, kind of looking to just experiment, play around with these watches a little bit. I don't actually have a manually winding watch, so these two are both manually winding. And so this is more just play around with a little bit, get used to it, see what the sizing looks like, maybe have something funky to wear as a dress watch here or there. And just something cool, a little conversation piece. You can see the hands are a little bit rusted. You can see the crystal is heavily scratched again. I don't really mind that. These watches were $16 each from the same seller, so it's very low price point. So after this, after we review or take a look at both watches, we're gonna try this PolyWatch, see how the crystal and scratches clean up, and let you know how that goes. So that's the first one. This is the second one, the one I was more excited about, and this is from another popular, at least on eBay, and in the cheap vintage watch world, This brand is called Pobeda. And again, it's a Russian manufacturer. Again, I got both watches from the Ukraine. But this one is really funky looking. Pobeda has a number of different styles. But this one really caught my eye for a couple reasons. This one is also 34 millimeters case dimension. But you can see that the watches look, the one watch looks a lot larger, and that's because the dial is larger. In this one there's a larger bezel, so it takes up more room, so it has a smaller dial. This one, the bezel, not even a bezel, just the end is very thin, and the dial takes up more room. This one is one I was really interested in because one of the watches on my more like goal watch list is a Nomos watch. Nomos is a Swiss, or actually German manufacturer of dress watches, this Bauhaus kind of minimalist look. And their watches often are like 36 millimeters. They make a variety of different sizes, but the most popular are 36 millimeters. They also make one that's 33 millimeters, and I really wanted to see how something that size, 33, 34 millimeters, will look on my wrist. Because what they say about Nomos is that they wear a lot larger than the actual case dimension, because the dial is so much larger, so it takes up most of the case dimension space. And that's really why I was looking for something that had a large dial, even at a smaller case dimension. So even though this is 34 millimeters, it does look a lot larger than, say, this 34 millimeter watch. So the other thing that drew me, as you can tell, this is like actually a really funky looking watch, right? It has these kind of weird, not weird, I don't even know how to describe it, just this kind of funky looking Arabic numerals around the watch. It has a small seconds hand on the bottom, and kind of a cool silver off-white sunburst dial. Really neat looking watch. I mean, I think this would be really cool with a black leather strap, and has a domed crystal at the top. This also has a number of scratches on, not as bad as the other watch, but again, we're going to try that PolyWatch out, see how it cleans up. But this is a really funky one, and I think that this is really kind of equivalent to those 33 millimeter Nomos watches. So I'm curious to get this on my wrist and see if that's something I could think about doing, you know, because that's a little bit lower price point than some of their 36 to 40 millimeter watches. So we'll try this out and see how it goes. So we will, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this PolyWatch, apply it to both of these crystals, come back and show you how they look. So again, you can see this one is heavily scratched. This one is not as bad, but still pretty heavily scratched. So we're going to take a break. I'm going to put this PolyWatch on, rub it down with a microfiber cloth for a couple of minutes at least, and we'll come back and see how it looks. Okay guys, we're back, and unfortunately I didn't have any straps that fit these 18 millimeter lug widths, so I'm going to have to invest in some smaller straps. I did try for a few minutes with the PolyWatch. It did seem to take some of the very fine scratches out, but not the heavy ones, although this one is, I mean, with this angle you can see there's still a bunch of little scratches on the crystal, but I did notice some that were taken off by it, but not great. I do think the directions do say you need a few applications for deep scratches. There's a few, not as many scratches on this one, but there are some deeper ones. So I may try it out with another microfiber cloth and give it a shot. But you know, again, these are just more fun watches to play around with. Maybe play around with the backs, with the movements a little bit. Maybe investigate on this one, replacing the hands. But I mean, I think this one looks pretty cool. It, at a glance, from a little bit of a distance, you can't really notice the scratches, Both watches run. The small seconds are running, and they're interesting, fun pieces. So manually winding again, so give me a little bit of experience with that. Again, these are $16 each, so not a ton of money, but something cool to play around with and something a little bit unique. So again, these are my two vintage Russian watches, the Vostok and the Pobeda. And thanks for watching. And I'll keep you posted on these watches if I have any more luck with the PolyWatch or make any adjustments to the watch, like the hand removal or any other updates to this to try to maybe restore these to a little bit better condition. But for now, they're a little cool, funky, fun pieces to play around with. So thanks for watching again, and keep watching our channel. And make sure to subscribe and also follow us on Instagram, mg_modern_watches. Thanks so much. Bye.